you everyone for joining us today. This is another day of this week that we wanted to roll out lessons from quarantine. So thank you for joining us. Hello out there. And today we've got three very special people. And I wanted to remind you, if you haven't seen our first episode, this is what we're trying to do with as our economy starts to open up and businesses start to open up. We thought it would be a great idea to gather some expert learners and gather their lessons learned from quarantine, because we have this time to take some time to reflect on our lives and reflect on our experiences up until now. And in that reflection, a lot of times there's some really great lessons and learnings that happen. So we wanted to make sure that we were bringing on some expert learners so that they could share their lessons, and that we can share that all with all of you out there. And that way we can learn collectively and bring better experiences to this new reality that we're going to be stepping into. So today I have three very, very special guests. And these women, or these ladies, are I would say they're expert learners and women that I have learned probably the most learned the most from over the course of my life. So these are my three wonderful sisters, and I am the youngest of three of them. So I've had the joy of learning from all of them and seeing what they've gone through and learning through their experiences, so I don't have to make the same mistakes. Thank you. Thanks so much for joining us. So I'm going to let them go ahead and introduce themselves. We'll start with Debbie. She is the oldest of us.
Hi, I'm Debra, and I currently am staying in Washington, D.C. during this pandemic. And I currently, as an expert learner, are teaching individuals all the service opportunities that we have in our country in our military, national, and public service arena. Thanks, Terry.
Yeah, thanks for being here. All right, we'll go over to Geri.
Hi, my name is Geri. I am located in Platte Center, Nebraska. For those of you who don't quite know where that is, we're a little over 100 miles west of Omaha, Nebraska, and 3,682 miles east of Hawaii. Always remember that number. So currently, my job is, I don't really teach or learn anything. My background, I'm a retired Army veteran, so I've been blessed with having outstanding mentors while I was in the military that taught me a lot of life lessons, work lessons. The military offers some great leadership courses. They punch all those field manuals and technical manuals in your head. And basically, being a short Asian woman in a leadership position in the Army, you're going to fall down a lot, and you're going to have to pick yourself up a lot, dust yourself off, and move on. So lots of life and work lessons learned while you're in the military. Yeah.
Awesome. Thanks. Yes, for sure. All right, Merri.
Hi, my name is Merri, and I live in Honolulu, Hawaii. That's Oahu. And right now, as a profession, I am a teacher. I actually am the curriculum coordinator at one of the local elementary schools, and so I work with administration and teachers a lot more than I do directly with students. So right now, out of the classroom, but still working in education.
That's awesome. So I got three expert learners, all in different areas. And of course, Merri's a teacher, so she is already an expert learner, and she's helping other educators, right? Helping other educators teach our children during this time of chaos and no classrooms or no classrooms. So, and then we have Debbie, who works in the government side and looking at how she's helping just us as a society and as citizens of the U.S. learn more about our government services. And then Geri, who's been through so many different experiences and has just been able to adapt to all of these different adversities and come out on top. So that's awesome. I'm sure you all have amazing lessons to share with us, and no pressure there. Like, if you don't feel it's amazing, it's okay, right? No lesson is too small, I think, is a good kind of phrase that we can tie everything that we're talking about to. Well, so before we get started, one thing that I always like to start with is just get everyone in a good headspace. And so we like to share and think about what's one thing that we're grateful for today. So we'll start with, actually, we'll go opposite. So let's start with Merri. What are you grateful for today?
Today,
Yes, today.
this morning, so I've been trying to make yeast, like wild yeast, right? Yeah, and they all this is my third time. The first two times it just died. So today I woke up and I went to check on my yeast. This has been like a week and a half, and it grew it was poofy. So I'm thankful that my yeast didn't die and actually it floated, so it's ready to make bread. That's a whole nother thing though. We'll see how that works out.
Awesome.
Awesome. All right, Geri, what are you grateful for today?
Okay, so today, I didn't even realize it until I got home from work. Today, NASCAR has started racing again. And my husband is so happy.
That's important. Make sure that husbands are happy.
It is very important. It's, he works hard and it's Sunday and it's just nice that he's able to relax and watch his cars go round and round. So hooray for NASCAR. Thank you, NASCAR.
Okay, Debbie, what are you grateful for today?
I'm grateful for this opportunity and to be with my 3 sisters. So thank you.
Hey,
Yay!
Yay!
That's the good answer.
Yay!
It is, right? Like, we all live in different states across the country, even though we all originated from Hawaii, and Merri is the only one that's still there. Lucky you. But we're all able to come together. It's amazing, right? That we can do this and see each other face to face and share, and also share like all the things we have to say, because we have so much to say with the rest of the world out there. All right. Well, thanks for sharing that. So we'll jump into our main kind of topic and focus here, which was to talk about what's one thing that you learned during quarantine. What's one, and it doesn't have to be like the one lesson, but what's one lesson that has impacted you that you want to think about how that will move forward with you once we start reopening a lot of these businesses. So we'll go back to starting with Debbie. What's one thing that you learned during quarantine?
Well, I learned that I am grateful for my family and my friends, because even though I'm here, I'm not alone. I mean, there are times where, this is Washington, D.C., so we have our share of toilet paper hoarders, and thought that I wasn't going to be able to have the supplies I need. But thankfully, I've got family and friends that have looked out for me and helped me to make sure that I'm taken care of. So I think that has made me appreciate that even though I may be living here by myself, I'm not alone.
That's a great lesson. Thank you. Yeah, and you got some Spam Musubis in your care package, I saw.
I did, and some taro chips all the way from Hawaii.
That's awesome.
Wow.
Okay, Geri, what's one lesson you learned?
Oh,
so one lesson that I learned, so it's actually a lesson that I have learned. I've been in Nebraska for about 5 years now, and I'm not obviously from the Midwest, very far from it, a very different culture. But what I learned, especially out here in the Midwest, in a very small community. So when I say I'm in Platte Center, Nebraska, we have a community of about 550 people. So if you can imagine, it's a very small town. The neighborhood, there's a lady. It's the generosity of this culture, of this heart of America. There's a lady in our community every Saturday at 4:00 puts out cinnamon rolls for the entire community. She opens up her back porch and she says, don't come earlier than 4, but at 4:00 come in. She'll even put down, please make sure you're doing your social distancing and all that kind of stuff. You have cars like lined up waiting for people, people will go in, get their cinnamon rolls, they'll come out, car will leave. Everybody is just they're generous and they're respectful of each other. It's amazing. It's how everyone is going through all this chaos, but somehow this community has managed to find their own peace. And that's kind of like my big thing that I've learned during quarantine.
Oh, that's awesome. Oh my gosh, everyone gets cinnamon rolls?
Oh yeah, that lady is amazing. She does more than cinnamon rolls. She's started to do, like, if she has like this excess of potatoes. So she'll put out on Facebook, we have a little community page for Platt Center, and she'll say, I'm making potato soup. I have a ton of potatoes. I'm going to have a lot of extra. Does anybody want any? And then people will message her, and then she'll reserve some for it. And she'll say, okay, I've given away all the soup. I can't give any more away, but she does it every week. And I believe so the community we've been very generous with her. We leave donations and to help her pay for, the supplies that she's using to bake. And so all that means is now she's just baking more. Because she said everyone's been so generous. She has all this money, so she goes out and just buys all her baking goods and she just bakes. She loves it. She said, I'm not working. This is what I love to do. I believe she's like, that's her full-time job right now, is baking for us.
Wow.
Pretty amazing. Yeah.
Oh, I need a neighbor like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah.
I wish I had a neighbor that baked.
I know, right? Hello, people.
Okay, Merri, what's one lesson you've learned during quarantine?
What kind of amazed me about just my school in general was the ability for the teachers to adapt, because going from a traditional learning environment to virtual in a matter of like a week, right? It was I was worried because we have teachers who range, technology wise, from someone who doesn't even like to turn on their computer or has a hard time connecting to their printer to, there's like people who are very savvy with tech, but everybody had to be online. And so the amount of learning that I saw in that short amount of time, and the building on top of each other, like one person would do a website and then they teach the other person, like, okay, this is how you get on like Google sites and you build this. And in a matter of weeks, our teachers rolled out all of their sites. They had planned majority of their lessons and were like ready to, put things up virtually. So that was pretty amazing. There's I think the learning was that everybody has the ability to learn and adapt. And, when faced with something like this, like a big challenge, I think most people tend to rise to the occasion than not. So I think for me, it was really the adaptability of people in general that I learned.
That's fantastic. Right. I loved you had kind of just summarized it in the ability of people to learn and adapt. And as an educator, like that's what you guys do, right? See that potential in everyone to learn and adapt. Mm-hmm. And it's just kind of awesome to hear you say that in seeing that from your fellow educators in Hawaii. And I would say the same thing, here with, my like Leilani and my daughter, she's 8 and we had to see their whole school system try to struggle and adapt and figure things out. And not to say it was perfect, but, they did respond and had to figure stuff out. And it was really interesting to hear all 3 of your folks' lessons, because there was a lot of sense of community in what you had learned, in the lessons you had learned. Because Debbie, you had talked about, community based on your existing connections, right? Like they came and they reached out, and because you are living in DC, away from family and away from friends, but they were still able to continue with that relationship and build on it and be there for you. And then Geri, like you're in an entire community that's like pretty new to you, yeah. But being kind of welcomed and feeling like part of that community because this one woman is just baking for everybody, which is amazing. We have like, I don't even know how many houses around here, but no one's offered me free cinnamon rolls yet. But maybe I've got to step up and be like, okay, well,
you have to be the one. You have to be the one.
I'm going to start making some cinnamon rolls. And then, and Merri, like your educators, right? That's awesome when they're coming together and starting to build off of each other and teaching each other how to do things. I mean, that's kind of crazy, the amount of togetherness that we've built as a society and in our communities, when you think of how much distance we've had to bring upon ourselves, right? Mm-hmm. That's awesome. So the last question that I'm going to tap on into this lessons is, we are going to be seeing, our businesses start to open up, our cities start to reopen, and we're seeing that in some of the states already. So I guess, what are some things that maybe you might be a little worried about, and to these lessons that you've learned during quarantine, how can they apply? How do you see them applying in the future? Anyone can start on this one.
Well,
It's not going to work.
I'm not a terribly social person to begin with. And being situated in a community where people are very social, this is probably one of the biggest adaptations I've had to make in my entire life, moving here 5 years ago. So seeing all this generosity, and it really kind of makes me want to do the same thing. I'm not a baker. I'm not going to make cinnamon rolls, but just kind of maybe putting myself out there and helping, like volunteering for things in my community and getting to know people a little bit better, I would say is something that I feel like I'm definitely pulling from this.
Oh, that's awesome.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so if it's not cinnamon rolls and you're going to start volunteering, is there something you're going to make that you can share with the rest of
No. I've tried during this quarantine to bake and cook, and I've been terrible at it. So I'm going to have to think of, I don't know, maybe somebody needs a website built or something. I don't know. I'm good on the computer. I'm just not in the kitchen.
Nice. All right, that's awesome.
Geri, I was going to say, I think it's similar because I see it here in Washington as well.
Mm-hmm.
It's a big city. People really don't know each other. They didn't really know their neighbors until now, when you're sequestered for 8 weeks, right? And now we have every Sunday in the alley, with social distancing, though, the neighbors are out and the kids are playing. And so people know each other much better. Now they're having different like happy hours and things like that. And I think one of the things that I've seen from this is sort of a greater sense of community and a greater sense of when, like we say it, we're all in this together, but then you see actions actually matching those words, right?
Yeah.
I saw on one of my postings a neighbor that reached out that said, I don't know where else to turn, but I can't feed my kids. And it was like minutes. Somebody responded like, DM me with your address, and then they brought over food and things like that.
Yeah.
So I think in the end, I think some of the lessons that we will learn is that there's still, even though there's a lot of, I think, conflict and sort of in our country, that underlying all that is that we still share a lot in common, and that we ultimately are still there for each other regardless.
Agreed.
That's awesome. Oh, it's really exciting to hear that. And oh my gosh, it's amazing that someone steps up, right? Like they're willing to be vulnerable enough to ask, and people step up. Whereas in the past, you might not have seen that happen.
Yeah.
What do you got, Merri?
Well, I guess with everything opening up, the beaches opened up yesterday, so there's like 100 million people on the beaches, which in Hawaii, social distancing is hard. You know what I mean? Even though it's changed a lot, family is still a big thing, and everybody's in your family, right? Like your neighbors, your family is just always extended, and so I think it was really hard for people to be distanced. So I think we reconnected with understanding how important our community is, and so I think that was one thing that it would be nice when things open up. One thing that kind of struck me while I was in this whole quarantine thing was the environment, and like now there's no cars, right? Like there's hardly any cars on the road, and people weren't really going anywhere, and like the environment was getting better, I think. And so I was like, oh, I hope we learn in that sense, like how if we really as a world put an effort that we can change the environment for the better. You know what I mean? Like we can make a positive change to like global climatic change, you know, like and make things a little bit better, less polluted. And especially in like here, you know, overfishing and like just the reefs in general, we're kind of being stressed. So hopefully we can learn to be a little bit more balanced environmentally. That was my big aha, I think.
Yeah, that's a good one. Well, and I would imagine because Hawaii is, you know, like because the ecosystem is smaller, that you can see that impact in a shorter period of time, right? Like you can see when everyone stops going to the beach and stops putting all the sunscreen on, that you can actually see some really quick rebuilding of that environment and ecosystem. Hopefully they'll do a study on that, because that would be awesome to hear.
Yeah, I think they were they were like kind of throwing some statistics out, but there's like a lot more fish in like areas that weren't having fish before. So I don't think it was like an official study, but yeah, I think everybody kind of noticed.
That's cool. Well, yeah, and that's another insight that we never really, I at least here, I don't think we heard too much around sustainability and just that positive impact on our ecosystems as far as the environment. But it was kind of nice to be able to drive and not have traffic.
Yeah.
I think I read somewhere where they can, because of less traffic on oceans, they actually can hear, scientists actually can hear better, sort of like what's happening in the earth in terms of eruptions and things like that. So it could help actually us in the future to make better predictions.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's not all this sort of background noise of the daily activities of our lives.
Right.
Has come down so much that it's actually helping scientists now.
Oh, that's interesting.
Right. Yeah, that's what I thought.
Wow. Okay. Well, so maybe hopefully that'll be an even larger impact as we think about moving forward, and hopefully as companies start to reopen, start rethinking, right? Like how many people do we need to have in a building? How many people can actually start working remotely? And do we have to keep moving people around? And maybe we don't. And that would be awesome.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Very cool. Well, so that was my last question. So just to kind of wrap up, do you have any, because we were able to share lessons across, and I don't think we've done this. I know we haven't done this as a family. So this is kind of the first time we've been able to hear each other's lessons and experiences from quarantine. So is there any kind of words of wisdom or last thoughts that you want to share before we wrap up?
No, well, I usually tell people just to stay healthy, take care of yourself and your family and your neighbors. Your basics. Just be kind. Be kind to each other.
Yes, be kind. That's a good one. We should all be kind to each other. How about you, Merri, Debbie?
I would say, yeah, I mean, I've been using that hashtag as well, be kind and have courage. And I think that it's also about hope, right? We will get through this.
Yeah.
And we will get through it together. So recognizing that, if all of us contribute to the greater good, it's hopefully our world will be better in the long run.
Mm-hmm. That's awesome. Okay, Merri, now you have to say something.
I don't know. I mean, in the same way, just love. I think that when we lead with our heart and we show people our heart more than anything else, I think that we connect. And so I think if we try and connect each other's hearts more than just mind and body, but then we'll find a common connection with everyone. And I think the world will be a little bit better when we start to connect in our hearts. Yeah, we tell that to the kindergartners, like,
Aww.
When you apologize, you have to apologize from your heart.
Yeah.
You should teach that to grown-ups too.
Yes, yes. I love that. Okay, so when you apologize, you have to apologize.
I was gonna say, I think it goes. What was that book? It was Everything You Need to Know in Life You Learned in First Grade.
Yeah.
Pretty much.
Yeah,
I think a lot of us need to go back and do a little brush up.
Yeah.
exactly.
Like wait in line is a good one.
Yeah. And patience.
Oh my gosh.
All right, well,
Same thing.
before we give the world a little too much Wada women attitude here, because I growing up in this family, I know how off the cuff our conversations can go. We have lots of things to share with the world. So before we go that direction, we'll wrap up. So I wanted to thank, if you are out there watching, thank you so much for joining us, and hopefully you can take some of these lessons that we shared and think about how that applies to your life, how you may have had the same experiences, similar experiences, or maybe you're the woman that's making all the cinnamon rolls, and thank you for doing that. So if you liked this video, make sure you subscribe and watch us every single day this week, because we're going to be coming every day and sharing more of these lessons from people across the country on what it was like during quarantine and lessons that we've learned that we'd love to see carry through in the future, so that we can make a brighter and better and more connected world in the US and hopefully globally. That where we can lead with our hearts and apologize from there as well. So thank you so much to my sisters. Thank you all for joining me. It's amazing. It's always great to connect with you all, and I learn so much from you every single time. So I'm excited to continue connecting with you all, and it's great. Like if I can share one thing that I've learned from quarantine was the ability to connect with family members and my loved ones and learn more from you guys now than I could before, even though we all are still in the same situation. So I'm so grateful that you all are still in my life and that I'm able to learn from you all, and for Zoom, for being able to connect with you all during this time and learn and continue learning from you all. So thanks again for joining us, and thank you for joining us, and we will see you tomorrow. Bye.